speaker of the day, Dr. Mimi Ito.
Thanks so much, Derek. So when my son was in 3rd grade, so about 7 or 8, he went off on a hike with his dad to a canyon near our house in the canyons of around LA, and they found a pond that was full of tadpoles. So of course, they emptied their thermos, they scooped up the tadpoles, brought them home, and I was not super thrilled to see this thermos full of squiggly creatures, but my husband assured me he was gonna go right away to the aquarium shop and figure out what they needed to raise these tadpoles into frogs. So they take off, and then they come back quite a while later, and my son is just beaming. It turns out they bought this huge aquarium with 3 kinds of sand and rocks and a special light and everything these little critters could possibly want to grow up into frogs. But it turns out that my son is not, he's happy about all the stuff. He's thrilled about the cool stuff, but he's actually really excited about somebody he met at the aquarium shop, the aquarium shop guy. And it turns out the aquarium shop guy, he walked that same canyon when he was a little boy. He found tadpoles, and then he investigated himself how to raise these tadpoles into frogs. And so this experience that he shared with my son was actually one of the foundations for what ignited in him a lifelong passion for learning about aquatic creatures that eventually led to his chosen profession. So for about a year after his encounter with the aquarium shop guy, when my son was asked that ubiquitous question, what do you want to be when you grow up? He would say, I don't know, it's a hard question. I could design robots, maybe I'll make video games, or I could be an aquarium shop guy. So today I'll be talking about learning, I'll be talking about technology, but at the heart of the matter is really this question of how can we help young learners find their aquarium shop guys, those educators, those passionate individuals and enthusiasts who are going to infect young people with their enthusiasm, their passion, share their knowledge and expertise, and set them on a pathway to become lifelong learners for the rest of their lives. So fast forward a few years, now my son is a sophomore in high school and he towers over me. And nowadays when he has an interest, there's something that he's curious about, of course the first place he goes is online to find information, to find his aquarium shop guys, to pursue an area of interest or specialization. And so the question that we really have in front of us today is how do we best support young learners like my son who are growing up in an environment of absolute abundance in access to information and social connectivity. And this is happening where our institutions of education, God bless them, were founded in a much different era of information scarcity where access to experts' knowledge and so on was a very different proposition versus the world that our young learners are growing up in where there's actually an overabundance of access to knowledge and social connection. So we're living through this very interesting moment, which at worst is a culture clash, and at best is a tremendous opportunity. And so I want to talk today a little bit about how we can get past the culture clash and turn the environment where kids are growing up in today into an opportunity. But I want to start with something just a little bit different to get everybody warmed up and talking to each other a little bit. So I hope you'll humor me and take part in what I think is a fun way to get started into the minds of kids these days, which is a digital youth quiz that we'll do as a group. So the first question I have is how many of you have a device that's connected to the internet that you can access a web page from right now? Oh, almost everybody. Okay, awesome. So I think there's kind of natural groupings. If you could so when I say go, and not until I say go, if you could just stand up, form into groups of 3 or 4, and I think there were enough people, so everybody there has to be one person who's going to post online, and then look at me once you form your groups. So stand up, form groups of 3 or 4, and then look at me. Okay, go. Okay, look at me if you've got your groups and you've introduced yourselves. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of faces. We good? Okay, look at me if you've got your groups. Awesome. So now that you have your groups, what I'm going to do is we're going to have 3 questions about young people and technology today. So your job in your group is, as a group, you come up with one answer, which is your best guess. And try not to Google the surveys, please, because it's much more fun if you just talk among yourselves and see where you are. So I'll give you about a minute to come up with a group answer, and then you're going to post it to this site, which is just a group chat board, todaysmeet.com, Portland Spark 15. So, but I'm going to give you the first question, then you'll have a minute. So the first question is, what percentage of Americans aged 16 to 29 read a book in 2012? Okay, so if you have an answer as a group, start posting it to today's meet. You want to take a look? Yeah, switch over. Okay, we're seeing some answers come in. 30%, I guess they wish it was more. 27, let's see some more guesses up there. How are people doing? Okay, is everybody finding the site okay? It's todaysmeet.com, Portland Spark 15, /Portland Spark 15. Okay, they're coming in. The answers are coming in. Okay. Is everybody, let's get a few more. 40, 20, 50, 50. So far the highest is 50. Anyone going higher than 50 or lower than, I think 15 might have been the lowest. 50 is kind of at the high range. Oh, we got a 68. We got an 83. Okay, I have a feeling somebody might know this research. Okay, you ready to see the answer? Everybody ready? Okay. So maybe we can switch over. 83. So who was the 80? Okay, I see the 83 team. Okay, so I usually like to start with this just as a reminder that even though kids are super digital these days, it doesn't mean that they aren't reading and that they aren't reading long-form things like books. So, and this comes from some Pew Research, library research on young readers. And it's a good reminder that what we think of as traditional literacies aren't necessarily going away. And this is corroborated by other work. For example, Andrea and Karen Lunsford have done work on writing of college students, and they've found that the volume of writing has increased dramatically over the past 20 years since the turn to digital. And contrary to popular expectations, the error rates in writing in comparison, of those two time periods haven't actually changed. That the nature of the errors have changed, but the error rates, the overall quality of writing has been pretty consistent, and that young people, college students actually really do know the difference between a text message and a college essay. Okay, so ready for the next question? Okay. So this is 2009 numbers, and this is per day. How many hours did US kids age 8 to 18 spend with media? 1 minute. Okay. Next question. 5 hours, 6 hours. Okay, let's see some other guesses up there. A day, in a day. Okay, 5 to 6 seems popular. Anybody? Oh, 2 hours, 4 hours. Oh, 14. Okay, that's the most we've seen. Okay. 10, 4, 6. Okay. Okay, you ready to see the answer? Oh, not yet. Okay, 5.5. We ready? Okay. So, 7.5. I think there were some groups that were pretty close. Now, for those of you who guessed more, they are actually able to pack 11 hours of media within that 7.5 hours due to multitasking. So there might have been several right answers here. And actually, between the time that Darren asked me to submit the slides for this event and today, a new study was released by Common Sense Media, and this number is currently 9 hours. So between 2009, 2014, assuming that's about when they fielded the study, these numbers have been going up. And this is the part that really has been changing, because so much of young people's communication, so it's not just information, it's not just entertainment, but their actual social communication is being mediated through digital and media. This is why we're seeing this very steady increase in the overall volume of media engagement, and we have to understand that, if you want to meet kids where they are today, this is where they are. Okay, last question. What percentage of gamers are female today? Okay, this one's usually pretty fast, so. Okay, let's see where we are on the percentages here. 72, okay. Oh wait, 30, 40, 28, 40, okay, 33. There's a range here. Okay, let's go ahead and post. People are usually pretty quick with this one. So, oh look, somebody figured out the joystick icon. That's nice. I like that. Okay, everybody post their answers. We're seeing a range from 10% to over 50. Some people are guessing that more women than men. Okay, you ready? Okay, 45. Okay, I think there's some groups that were pretty close. So, I think the important thing to realize with gaming is it's not just for teenage boys anymore. The genres have diversified, the demographics have diversified. Among teens, virtually every kid is a gamer. It's at about 98% now. In 2008, the gaming industry surpassed the movie industry in revenue. Gaming is the dominant entertainment medium of our time, full stop. So thank you, everybody, for participating in the Digital Youth Quiz. Everybody's a winner. So I think it's an important reminder that these kind of more interactive and participatory forms of media engagement, it's not just more media, but the types and genres and the level of engagement in media has changed dramatically now that gaming really is the dominant mode that kids interact. So I think the question we were faced with today is, given these kids who are always connected, who expect engagement, participation, interactivity, what happens when they walk into the classroom? So not only are they Facebooking and texting during class, but they're taking to this whole ecology of peer-to-peer connection to meet a variety of learning needs. And sometimes they do things that we approve of, like doing note-taking on an Etherpad or wiki, or setting up a Facebook group around a class. But they're also doing things like screening the hard graders through ratemyprofessors.com, going to one of the many essay download sites, free and paid, or my latest favorite are services that will take your online class for you. So the problem is, now that the communication at the student layer is so fast and seamless, we as educators can't really be in the job of playing whack-a-mole to limit the communication. It's really challenging us to think of how to engage with this new ecology as a positive force rather than something that we need to police. And these problems happen really when learning is not tied to meaningful problem solving and inquiry, when it's about filling in the blanks or writing an essay that's been written hundreds and hundreds of times before, and when learning is really becoming for the student, filling in the blanks, the line on the resume, the grade, and so on. We all know that as good educators, and in a way, a lot of these new communication platforms and so on are challenging us to really return to the fundamentals of what we know is good pedagogy and the kind of learning that we want to support. So this is the challenge we're facing. Now, we know that young people enter school pretty happy, engaged, eager to learn. And over time, the longer we have them in schools, their enthusiasm for learning declines over time. So this is what Gallup has called the school cliff. And by the time they get to us in college, about half of them are disengaged. And Richard Aram and Josipa Roska have recently done a fairly large-scale study of learning among college students and have followed them into early adulthood. And they found some pretty damning evidence for those of us working in higher education. They did assessments of student learning that were really centered on writing and problem solving, critical thinking, higher order kinds of learning and capacity. And they found that about half of students showed no gains in their first 2 years of college. So that should really be telling us something. So we're really in a context where we're kind of living through this culture clash between the modes and institutions of learning that were perfected in an earlier age and the expectations and practices of internet kids who are growing up in a much different kind of networked ecosystem. And it's important to remember that this gap or this culture clash looks differently for kids located in different points of the socioeconomic spectrum. And I know we'll have speakers later today that will be addressing some of these concerns. And most of us are aware of the fact of the equity gap in formal education, right? We know the differences between the access and resources that kids have in schools. And even though we're seeing rising rates of college attendance and completion across the socioeconomic spectrum, more privileged kids are getting there more, so the gap is widening. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the gap is actually widening faster in out-of-school enrichment. And these are numbers that are showing the changes that in family investments and out-of-school learning activities, where you'll see that the bottom line is the poorest quintile of families. Since the 70s, it's kind of stayed at about $1,000 per family. And you'll see that the wealthiest families have tripled their investments from about $3,000 to almost $9,000 per family during that same time period. And what this is really showing is that highly educated and wealthier families are really investing in that kind of out-of-school learning that is about letting their kids specialize, pursue passionate interests, having the opportunity to connect with peers, mentors, aquarium shop guys in their area of interest, and go deep and have those experiences of being able to pursue something that's a genuine interest and passion, but also being able to connect with adults, caring adults in that area of interest, and do something that is about finding their place in the world and making a genuine contribution, whether that's through athletics, through artistic performances, through publications. That experience of really being able to put something out there in the broader world, having that firm handshake, being able to look an adult in the eye and feel like you really have a place here, something to contribute, and that you belong. These kinds of authentic experiences, it's not that the poor families don't believe that they want this for their children, but increasingly it's become a burden on families to offer these kinds of experiences in their out-of-school settings. So in theory, technology should help, right? Because we can deliver more, cheaper, more broadly. MOOCs are just one example of how open online technologies are creating really new possibilities, right, for young learners to be able to access highly specialized kinds of learning opportunities, content, have access to experts in a way that was really unimaginable for earlier generations. Now, the problem, though, is that we know from the history of technology, time and time again, that when you drop a new technology into an already unequal social world, that technology gives the more privileged people superpowers, right? So in theory, the internet is free and accessible to everybody. In reality, it's giving even more advantage to the kids who come from tech-savvy, highly educated families. And you see this really clearly in, for example, looking at MOOCs, where the vast majority of people who engage with MOOCs are people who already have degrees in higher education. So that's where it's just so critical, the work that all of you are doing here, because it's really, our educational institutions have an even more powerful role to play in providing access, support, mentorship, brokering to guide young people to this much wider palette of opportunities that we have today. Okay, actually I'm gonna go back. So I wanna kind of take a bit of the temperature of all of you here in this room, just how you're feeling about kids these days and how your organizations are grappling with these changes. So if you could show me with your thumbs, let's start with your organization, your school or university or wherever you're working. How optimistic or pessimistic do you feel about how your organization is adapting to these changes? Where thumbs up is like, we're killing it, we're innovating, we're taking advantage of all these new opportunities. Thumbs down is it's a really tough slog. We feel like we're in the pain point of this culture clash, where sideways is somewhere in the middle. So show me with your thumbs where you think you are. Okay, a lot of thumbs ups and a lot of sideways. I don't think I see many thumbs down. That's probably because you're here, which is good. This is a nice crowd. So now I want to hear what you think about kids these days. So how pessimistic or optimistic do you feel about kids these days, and whether these new technologies are making them smarter, better, faster, and it's a great thing? Thumbs down is they're distracted, socially isolated, really shallow thinkers, and sideways is somewhere in between. Okay, interesting, yeah. So I think I see more thumbs up for the kids than the organizations, although it might be a pretty even split. But I like to quote Bill Gibson, who said, "The future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed." So I feel like, it's different kids are inhabiting a different reality, but it's great to see that this is a group who is clearly trying to make a difference and making some progress. So I want to make it a little bit more concrete by talking about a young learner. So what I do is my team and I hang out with teens on the internet and figure out how they're learning and affiliating online. And we did a range of case studies of youth affinity groups ranging from gamers to fans to fashionistas, and how they were using the internet and their peer relations online to fuel their learning. And Abigail comes from a study that we did of fans of the boy band One Direction. How many of you know One Direction? Okay, admit it. I know more of you know One Direction. They're an incredibly activated fandom, as you may know, digital fandom, but we were specifically looking at young, mostly girls, who were writing fan fiction around 1D. And Abigail was a great example. She was 14 when we talked to her, and she started as a fan of Harry Potter and then moved on to be a directioner. And she found her people on this platform called Wattpad, which is an online publishing platform which has become quickly the dominant platform for fan fiction writers. And so she first started as a reader, and then she was really nervous about it at first, but started publishing her own work on Wattpad after a while. After her mom got her a smartphone, she would write her stories on her smartphone and publish them. And then she started getting positive feedback and eventually had quite a following. And so if you look at her learning pathway, she started with a passionate interest around Harry Potter and One Direction. And then what was really game-changing for her was she was able to connect to a community who shared not only this interest, but who was also supporting her learning and skill development and writing through this online platform. And then what was very interesting about Abigail, and it's kind of an exceptional story in this sense, is that she had a teacher at school who she confided in that she was actually a fan fiction writer. Most kids won't do this. So when we interview kids, they're like, "Oh my God, I would never tell my parents or teachers I write 1D fanfic." But she did. She shared with the teacher, and then her teacher brokered some opportunities in school. She suggested she write for the school newspaper and other things. And eventually, Abigail went on to take the leap into applying to a specialized high school that would foster her interest in creative writing. And it's definitely something she wouldn't have done if she hadn't had this opportunity to really develop her skills and confidence within a supportive peer group that she found online. So how many of you know a young person who goes online to connect to a passionate affinity group, whether it's making movies or fandom or gaming? Okay, so most of you. Now keep your hand up if that young person has connected that interest to an opportunity in school or career or civic engagement. Okay, yeah, that's much fewer. So, that's actually what we found in our research too. So Abigail is an example of what we call a connected learner. She's somebody who was able to take an interest and connect it to find a supportive peer learning community that supported that interest, but was also able to connect it to an opportunity, right? And what we found was that most kids have a peer group. Most kids have an interest. A fair number of kids are geeking out on an interest in an online affinity group that allows for specialization and the kind of learning that wouldn't necessarily be possible within a local context. But very few of them are able to then connect that to a school opportunity or a job opportunity or a civic engagement. That happens, but is much rarer, even when we are intentionally sampling and looking for kids who are doing this. So the reality for most kids is that they're actually struggling to connect the learning that they're doing in school to their interests, much less to the wider world, right? And the question I think that's really in front of us as educators is how do we build these connections? And at one level, it's pretty simple, right? We need to have people who are experts who want to share what they know, and we have to let kids find them, find their aquarium shop guys. This doesn't require technology, but in theory, the internet should be able to help with this, right? So the ideal, I think, is that all of us in our varied learning institutions, at least part of our job should be about helping to support kids in building these connections and brokering to opportunities in the wider world. So I have a question for all of you. I think we've all had an experience of connecting to somebody who, or having a person in our lives who has pushed us to try something new, who has pushed us to go deeper into something that we're engaged in already. These are the aquarium shop guys in our lives, right? It could be a teacher in your childhood. It could be a friend, a fellow hobbyist, somebody who shares recipes with you and encourages you to try something new. Or it could be a community of interest like Abigail had with her fan fiction community. So I want to ask you all to just take 30 seconds, because I'm running over already, and just turn to your neighbor and share if there is a learning hero in your lives. It doesn't have to be like a gigantic learning hero. It could be a little learning hero. So take 30 minutes and 30 seconds, and then post to today's meet with #LearningHero, or even tweet it out if you want to share. Okay, thanks.
I don't want to kick you off stage, and we will have a couple of questions.
Okay, yeah, I want to leave time for questions,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's the main thing, yeah.
What is your learning hero? Or who is yours? So think about it.
Okay. Okay, so if anybody wants to share their learning heroes, feel free to post. You don't even have to hashtag, just post on today's meet. Or if anybody wants to just share in real time too. I think it might be hard to hear in this group though. Nobody wants to share on today's meet. Does anybody want to share to the group? You have.
Put me in there.
Dara would be fine to be named as a learning hero. Anybody? No learning heroes? Okay, thank you.
I was very fortunate to have a high school band teacher that was passionate about getting the best out of all of us. And people I'm still in contact with today from those days remember him, remember what we were able to accomplish as a group. And it was just a great memory.
Wow, so you're still in touch with some of the people from then too. Anybody else? Yeah.
So I met somebody from a mutual group on Facebook who is pursuing a doctorate of divinity in coaching. And he's posting all kinds of stuff about coaching and brain research and all these things that I'm passionate about. And so we're friends on Facebook, and I'm getting a virtual meeting just because I'm reading this stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, these are great examples. A lot of times, here's more. Yeah, we have there are these very potent memories from our childhood, but then, it can happen at any time in your life, and a lot of family members and the diversity of who people name as learning heroes is actually incredibly interesting. If we could go back to the slides.
Yes,
Yeah, so just feel free to keep sharing on the today's meet. So it turns out that the research backs this up, and I'll just point to one study, and there are many others, that was done in collaboration between Purdue and Gallup, where they interviewed 30,000 college graduates several years after they finished college to try to understand what in people's experiences in higher education led to thriving in life. And this wasn't just economic outcomes, but really about community connectedness, well-being, health, a lot of factors. And they found that it didn't actually matter if it was an elite university or a less selective school, if it was small or big, or whether it was specialized or general liberal arts orientation. The two things mattered. One was what you might think of as project-based learning. Like, did they engage in a meaningful activity that could be in class or extracurricular, but longer than one term? That mattered. And the second thing was the aquarium shop guy effect. So did they find a professor who inspired them or they connected with? And that doubled the impact in terms of life outcomes. So the aquarium shop guy matters, and it's been really something that has come out in our qualitative work around connected learning as well. Okay, so the question is, what can we do as educators, as technology makers, as people in schools, colleges, and universities? What should that look like in an era of abundant connectivity? And we've been, this is a work in progress, but as a community, we've been looking to the connected learning approach to say, look, it's not about each organization taking on this whole ecology, but how can we work together better in brokering opportunities between our organizations, whether it's a museum, a library, a school, an aquarium shop guy, whatever resources we have. And it's really, really great to see regional events like this that I think are really part of the answer in thinking about a region as a networked ecology of organizations serving students. Because from a student's point of view, it's not like everything's going to be in one place. It's about connecting the dots. And we find that the best connected learning experiences are really about integrating the social and peer support with interest, but also to the opportunity piece. And that's often the most critical missing piece of the equation. And that at the center of connected learning experiences, we generally find that there are certain properties, which we talk about as design principles. One is the shared purpose principle, that you're doing something meaningful together. It can be a sports competition, it can be making something, it can be a civic engagement, but there's a meaningful, relevant pursuit that the learning is in support of. Secondly, a lot of these activities have some creative or production orientation to them. And finally is the openly networked principle. And this is the part that's about connecting to the wider world, that it's not just a self-contained activity, but there's some way in which it's engaged or visible or accessible to a wider network. So I'll give two examples just in closing, which are some of the efforts that my colleagues and I have been working on to try to put some of these ideas into practice. One is the UMedia Learning Labs. The first one was launched several years ago as a teen space within the main downtown library in Chicago. And it's really a drop-in youth media center that is staffed with mentors in areas of youth interest in the digital arts and has a whole lot of resources ranging from books to laptops to a sound studio. And it models the principles of connected learning because it's focused on kids making things with digital media. They are organized, the activities, it can be kind of informal, hanging outy, but they also support what they call signature projects and performances, like weekly spoken word performances, competitions, something like a record label or a video game podcast, things that kids are doing together that is genuine and meaningful to them. And then finally, they make, even though they're a physical space, they make the effort to have their kids' work visible to the wider community, whether that's through doing performances in a regional spoken word competition or publishing a game review podcast or putting their fashion work on a Tumblr site, that kids are getting feedback and recognition from the wider world. And then finally, this is a new venture I launched earlier this year called Connected Camps, which is an effort to deliver learning experiences through the game of Minecraft. And Minecraft, of course, supports production center. It's not the only thing it supports, but we really focus on the making, the coding, the design aspects of Minecraft. We've staffed our camp and our courses with high school and college counselors who are themselves passionate about Minecraft. And for them, too, the opportunity to give back to younger kids and to a learning community through a game that they love and have invested so much time in, that reorients their whole interest world into a space of opportunity and possibility. And then the counselors design, coding challenges, survival challenges, building challenges, and so on that motivate the kids to really up their game. And then finally, Minecraft, of course, is one of the best examples of a game that lives and thrives in an openly networked ecosystem where our kids are sharing on live streams and Tumblrs and watching YouTube videos and so on. So there's not a whole lot of work we have to do on top of the already existing Minecraft ecosystem. So I know all of you are doing tons of things to grapple with these different dimensions of internet and new technology. And I think the exciting thing about the times we're living in is all of us have a role to play, whether we're a formal educator, an administrator, technology maker, a parent, or even just somebody who knows something and might want to share it online. It's super easy. And in fact, it's incumbent on everybody to be part of the solution to education. There's really no excuse because everybody can do something. And in that spirit, I know you have a full day and other opportunities to talk more about, and I'm looking forward to learning more. But there's one thing that I would love it if you could do today before you leave this site. So you all talked about learning heroes a few minutes ago, and I'm assuming that most of you had somebody. So the question I have is, does this learning hero know about the role they played in your life? And they might know already, but even if they know, they wouldn't mind hearing again. So send them an email, tweet out, pick up the phone, and just let them know that they made a difference in your life. That's one thing you can do today. And this is just one example of many of the very small things that we can all do to support an openly networked ecosystem where kids are going to be finding their aquarium shop guys. So we have a lot more information about connected learning, the research. We have a openly networked community of faculty engaging through connected courses around these ideas. So I look forward to hearing from all of you. And I think we have a few minutes for questions.
Yes,
Okay?
yes, we do. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, I've been looking at Twitter. My first question for you, and I'll keep thinking about it, is what does learning look like in an environment of abundant creativity?
Abundant creativity.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think the piece, in a lot of ways, the creative and making side of learning is, it's not new, but I think what's really different about today's ecosystem is the ability that kids have to share and circulate their work and get feedback on their work in ways that wasn't possible anymore previously. So, I talk to a lot of people who have ended up in sort of creative or scientific careers, and most of them have these early experiences of kind of messing around and tinkering and making stuff. But a lot of them were doing it in a fairly solitary mode for their childhood. And it's really different now. Like kids like Abigail, they just can get that community and peer support and feedback in a way that was really not possible before. So that feels very different to me.
Go ahead. I think the acoustics are pretty good. I can hold it. I can't hear you.
What tip would you give parents?
Yeah, well, I struggle every day. I think that, the thing that is hard for parents today is that we don't necessarily have familiarity with the specific interests that a lot of our kids are engaged in, whether it's gaming or fandom or so on. So when my daughter got into fandom and suddenly I'm like, what? You have 2,000 Twitter followers? What's up with that? It's you have to kind of learn and pay attention and be comfortable with being a little bit clueless, but asking a lot of questions and I think it really pushes us as parents to be learners and to do reverse mentorship while still like really being involved and asking the same fundamental questions that parents have always asked our kids about our kids, which is, are they, are these productive relationships? Is there the right balance of things in their lives? And especially, I don't know, parents of gamer boys struggle all the time, I think, because we don't necessarily know all the genres of gaming, like who are those other strangers on the other side of TeamSpeak. And, I make sure my son's computer is in a public space. I'm always hovering over him and irritating him and asking a lot of questions. But, at the end of the day, I feel like he actually appreciates my curiosity and, is quite open to my suggesting things and learning with him about this stuff. So I think the co-learning stance, especially in the teen years, is really, really important.
All right, anything else? Any last questions? I'll ask Chance. There you go.
No, I think that, when often, and this we see with when kids talk about educators too who have had a meaningful impact on their trajectories, is that, they have so much depth in these areas of specialty that they're interested in, and they can just spend so much more time and intensity. So, like, it's really fun to just listen to them sort of nerd out on something that they're into right now. And, I think it's especially challenging, like, when I talk about One Direction, I get more eye rolls on that than anybody else. But just to say, look, it's actually really interesting, and I really want to hear and know about what's interesting and why this is a fascinating community. And then it is fascinating. So, like, I learn a lot, but then there's sort of this part where it's like, oh, well, they don't necessarily know how to connect their interests to things that matter for their opportunity in their future lives and for adult-facing worlds. And like when we talk to, say, fan fiction writers or like gamers who play a game like StarCraft that has so much sort of literacy and STEM and academic content, like I coach these kids in how to talk about their interests in a way that they can advocate for their interests in the adult world. And that's where the mentorship, the adult perspective, is so important. It's like, it is sort of a cultural anthropologist kind of thing where, after a while, like we talk to these One Direction fans, they're like, I don't read or write. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't read or write? Like you just wrote 1,000 pages of fan fiction. Like, I don't write. That's like what you do in school. And then after a while of conversing and being respectful of their practice, they start seeing their stuff as possibly relevant for school. And the same thing with StarCraft gamers, like the kids who get really good about advocating for their interests, they'll say, oh, we advocated for a StarCraft after-school club in our high school. We told the teachers that it's all about critical thinking and problem solving and mathematical reasoning, and then they gave us like a room and, money for a club. So like when kids kind of develop that confidence of having an adult, like listen respectfully to their interests and, help them build those connections. The thing about connected learning is it seems like it's kind of at the margins of what we do as educators, but for the kids, it's at the absolute center of their being. So if they can make one connection from their interest to the adult world, it can be life-changing. So that's the difference between the connected learning and interest-driven model from other kinds of subjects that we deal with, because the other subjects are at the center of our worlds. The interests are at the center of their worlds. And that's when building those connections becomes incredibly transformative.
Okay, one slipped in right at the end here.
Okay.
Is there a day coming when teaching becomes entrepreneurial?
Oh, maybe that day's already here. I mean, I find it very interesting because, I've been tracking a lot of these new companies that have been popping up on the internet, whether that's School of Everything or Skillshare or the Mookie stuff. And I think there is this trend right now for this much more demand-driven kind of decompose sort of learning opportunities. So if you're like somebody who can do nail art, you can run a class on Skillshare, or if you want to, do your homebrew class. And so there is this sense that these hobbyists and these experts in any domain can suddenly just do these pop-up teaching opportunities in ways that weren't possible anymore. Now, I do think, that doesn't mean that our existing educational institutions are going away, but I do think that it creates a sort of unbundling of our business models, to think of it in business speak, in that we used to count on packages of sort of expertise, instruction, and assessment. They all come in a package that we think of as a course, and that's changing, where the credentialing, the actual content expertise, and the instructional setting is becoming unbundled, and different companies are kind of taking on different pieces of the ecosystem. So I do think our educational organizations, and I'm sure all of you are grappling with this, we're trying to figure out how to function effectively within this pretty fundamental change.
Can you please give her a hand? Thank you.
Thank you.